Welcome back, ladies and gents. We are glad to see you again. Make sure you are subscribing and following us on Divas and Ducats on Facebook and Instagram. Same thing on YouTube as well. So, on today's Diva Docket, what are we discussing?
We're going to be talking about shacking up. To shack or not to shack.
Yes, and for those of you who may not be, I don't know if it's a Southern thing. We both grew up in the South, so I can't speak to if y'all, speak on say it like shacking in the North or the West or the
I've never
Midwest.
heard it anywhere else. That
Yeah,
doesn't, like Midwest might. Maybe,
yeah.
I don't know.
So essentially, shacking is when you live together with your person before you are married.
Cohabitation.
Hmm, yes, it's
Cohabitation.
cohabitation. That's a nicer word. And I think that a lot of times, if you grew up a little more traditionally, you would hear "Why buy the cow when you get the milk for free?"
Mm-hmm.
kind of arguments in terms of discouraging folks from shacking, because to some it maybe desensitizes people from actually getting married because it's just like, what's the point?
Mm-hmm.
But both of us have at some point in our lives shacked, and both of us have had a less successful experience, depending on how you view success,
Mm-hmm.
and a better experience. So we're just gonna kind of talk through some of the things that we learned. And yeah, so let's just kind of get into it. Like, how, let's maybe talk about the lesser experience. How was that for you, or how did that unfold?
So I think the first one was a little bit more nerve wracking for me. Just because, like you said, in the good old Bible Belt in the South, shacking is from the older generation is very
Mm-hmm.
frowned upon, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so when I did it, my first experience, I did it actually after it was previous to an engagement, and
Mm-hmm.
I moved in with him after we had an engagement before marriage.
Yeah.
So it was still before marriage,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And it was, it was a little like I said, nerve wracking for me because that still had that stigma in my head. This is not something I'm supposed to do.
Mm-hmm.
My parents necessarily frowning down on it. Um, but the experience itself was probably financially based. It was a financial decision.
Okay.
Um, and I think therefore did not work out. Like maybe because the intent, like there were a lot of discussions that didn't happen
Mm.
prior to. Whereas the second one, it was like a sit down. It was a different discussion. The first one that I didn't have any expectations on it because I had never done it before.
Okay.
So there were probably things, like I said, that were missed in discussions ahead of time, bills, um, like just things. Like there's stuff you don't think about when you move in with someone. And I think a lot of it, like you hear about like this first year, and this is coming from like wives that have told me, oh my God, I wasn't expecting like that and have not shacked before, wives that have not shacked before, spouses that have not shacked before.
Mm-hmm.
And then in that first year, like they move in together and it's just adjusting.
Mm-hmm.
Like the adjustment period of it um, is a huge deal. Like that
Mm-hmm.
I was not ready for. Like giving up your space, which I think typically you hear about guys saying that, right?
Yeah.
Like, oh my God, I don't want to give up my space. I don't want to do these things. But newsflash, women go through that too, especially,
Mm-hmm.
what I'm saying, like older.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is coming out your 20s, coming from mama house, going straight into someone else's house. Um, or your spouse's or partner's house, that's probably a different experience because you have never had your own space.
Yeah.
But when you've had your space for 10 years, 15 years, and then suddenly having to share dishes, choosing who keeps the mixing bowls, like
Yeah.
that kind of stuff was very like, oh
Mm-hmm.
my God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So you spoke to not having certain financial conversations.
Mm-hmm.
So was it a matter of who does what, or like where people were financially, or like?
So
for
I
him.
that it was a huge learning experience, and I guess it made me laugh when you said like what success looks like, right? I feel
Mhm.
like that relationship was successful because it taught me what I don't want to do in my second one,
Mhm.
which has been exactly what I desire, right?
Mhm.
So, but for that relationship, I wouldn't have gone into it. So, being Diva and Duckett, my I had a, I'm like, I'm doing the finances and
Okay.
here are the finances and what do you have going on and this is the way it's going to be done. And not realizing that a man needs to not necessarily feel needed because I know that's, yeah, I probably instantly said feel needed. Um, like it wasn't that I didn't make him feel needed, but it was the financial part of it was like he didn't feel like he contributed
Okay.
in the way, right?
Mhm.
Because in that relationship, it was like, I got this,
Mhm.
let's work on this, let's work on, to get you work, because he was starting a business and all these things. So it was, but it wasn't an ask.
Yeah.
It was, I know how to do consulting work, I know how to make
Right.
these
It's
things
like
work,
this is
let's
what we
follow this
doing.
plan.
Mhm.
And did the plan work? Sure. Did it feel make him feel emasculated? Which we had that conversation after he moved out. Absolutely, it wasn't something
Mhm.
I ever thought about. Again, not knowing, I was just going down. Melinda doing what
Yeah.
she does with consulting,
Mhm.
um, fixing finances. But in that second it was very much a conversation.
Okay.
What do you want to contribute to? How do we, want to do things? Like it was very, and I wouldn't have learned that but for
Mhm.
the fail.
Yeah.
So,
That's real. Okay. So my less successful experience was pretty much getting out of law school. So I was in my 20s, but I had lived by myself prior to moving in with my then partner. So I the funny thing is my mom was actually more upset about it than my dad, and I expected the opposite,
right, you do
honestly,
accept, yeah.
expectation. But my mom was just like, she just swore I was gonna get pregnant and like derail my career plan. It was the whole thing. So I was determined, like, okay, well, I can't go, like, I gotta make sure I have it because they already don't think I should do this.
Right.
And so
We're
it
not going to hear I told you so.
right. So it was
Right.
just like at the time, when I did it, moving in, you go in, it's freshly cleaned or whatever. There's no furniture now. I remember like doing a little snow angel in the carpet. It was like so
Oh
excited.
my
I was
gosh.
like, and so I think to your point, and then of course, being younger, not really thinking, I think that there weren't really a lot of conversations about who's going to do what, or like really how to be sure that each person had their financial contributions or will be able to do that. And so at the time the person was still, in school, so I was kind of working full time, whereas they were not. And so things would come up where, maybe during the summer or during breaks where there would be a shortage and that would be a strain on me.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, that is kind of what caused a lot of the rift. I think, the relationship didn't work for other reasons,
Mm-hmm.
but from a financial standpoint, I think the rub was that because it felt like, okay, I'm working full time, I don't make a lot of money. You're fresh out of school, you're not
Mm-hmm.
making a lot of
Mm-hmm.
money like that. And
So
so,
you were out of law school.
mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, so I at that time was doing a lot of like, that's when because it was really a few years after the whole Great Recession, and so there was a lot of like contracting
Mm-hmm.
opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
again, the
Mm-hmm.
stress of it's not full time, you don't have benefits.
There's no security
At
in yet.
right at the time, thank God I wasn't 26 yet. I could, my mom and them could still health insurance wise.
Okay.
But
Okay.
yeah, so it was just that thing of
And the contracts aren't long. There might be
right,
3 weeks, and then you
right.
go
Then you
two
gotta
weeks
find the
with no
next
money. Yeah.
thing. So it's just like that aspect. If another person is short, it's just like
Mm-hmm.
it
Mm-hmm.
feels like even more of a pull. I do think the thing that I learned, really two things, um, was one to kind of have those conversations of like, what does, if you're gonna do it, what does you contributing look like versus me contributing, who kind of handles what. There's multiple ways because some people are very into joint. We can have a whole nother episode about that.
Mm-hmm.
Into joint accounts, some people are into you do the as long as it gets
Mm-hmm.
paid.
Mm-hmm.
But I think regardless of how you do it, the conversation needs to be had at the before you start to pack in the boxes. um but I think the other thing I did learn really was to your point about emasculating. I do know in the heat of the moment, I said something very disrespectful because I remember it was again a situation where we were having a shortage because of a decision made, no communication
A
about it. So we're
unilateral decision.
arguing.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so we're arguing about it. And at a certain point, they said, it's just like, you don't know how to let a man be a man. And I remember in the heat of the moment, I did say, well, when I see one,
Mm.
I will let him do that. And that's not nice. It wasn't. It was
That's
not.
not nice.
I mean, it was, it was disrespectful. So it's just, I really took that experience. And I mean, even in the way that I argue now, like, I try
Mm-hmm.
very hard to stay respectful, even when I'm upset, because
Not
I
to
just feel
cut.
like
Uh-huh.
you can't take it back. Like I said that thing and that's out there. I don't know, it might have rushed off him by now 12, 15 years later. But in
The
that
same way you
moment,
can recall it, he
but
can't too. I
right, I'm like
promise
in
you.
that moment, I'm sure. So it's like,
Yeah.
those kind of things I also learned in that relationship of like just growing pains of being someone's partner
Mm-hmm.
and like
Mm-hmm.
how to, do that well. So for me, ultimately, I was a person who knew that I wanted to be married, possibly have a family. And so it didn't end in that.
Mm-hmm.
So from that aspect, though, it was not successful. But I did learn from doing that, just like I said, certain financial things and being prepared. um a benefit, I mean, at the time it felt like rock bottom, but a benefit from that came like when I when the lease ended and we went our separate ways. I actually moved home, was taking care of debt, just still working, kind of climbing that way. And after I my next step from moving home was moving into my own home.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, okay, it felt like a step back, especially after having like lived on your own and lived with this person. But it was like, I think some of those lessons were necessary to kind of put you in the mindset of like, okay, let's start back at square one, and
Yeah.
you save and you not have to worry about doing all these things so that you can be ready for the next thing when that comes. So
Yeah. It caused you to move a little different.
mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah. And be prepared to take care of yourself. I am curious. Have you ever had a non-partner roommate? Like, have you ever had a roommate?
Yeah, well, in college, like my friends, I've done
Okay.
that as
Okay.
far as,
Like
but
dorm
right,
wise.
well,
Okay.
that, or it was basically like on campus apartment. So it
Okay.
was like
Okay.
you all shared a common area,
Okay.
and then two shared one bathroom, two shared another.
Okay.
So I've been in that situation, and we're still friends to this day. And then I moved with another young lady off to off campus apartments, but the way they set those up, because a lot of colleges do it where each of you has a separate lease.
Okay.
So it's like really they make more money because they should be charging
Right.
as much
I
as
was
they're
like,
charging, but you
dang.
each have a separately. So you have your own room and bathroom,
Okay.
and then of course the common area is what it is. But so you don't have to worry about if that person doesn't have their rent. Now you're in a
Mm,
bind.
okay. Okay. So
Mm-hmm.
it's a little different. Yeah. So that
Yeah.
I was gonna try to like juxtapose the difference between having like a roommate, that you've lived with. Because when I was after I got out of law school,
Mm-hmm.
I had an actual roommate. Like we shared, an apartment, a
Yeah.
townhome. Um, so just thinking about those differences, but I guess that would be a little different. Like if someone else fell on their lease and didn't
Mm-hmm.
have it, you still good. So it's a little different than
Yeah, in those
having a partition.
situations they didn't
Yeah.
say like, but to your point, in a traditional apartment, yeah, it is very similar in that rent has to be
Yeah.
paid regardless. It doesn't matter. So that situation, regardless of if you're in a relationship or what the
Mm-hmm.
relationship is, if you're sharing a space, unless you have separate leases, yeah,
Yeah.
that's a
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But I mean, another commonality is the fact that you have to really understand people's habits and quirks.
Mm-hmm.
So like, and it kind of segues me into the, I guess, successful time that I cohabitated. So my now husband and I, we didn't move together until we were engaged. And
Mm-hmm.
so the way it worked, and I think some of it is the timing that made it comical too. So it was like we got engaged, and then my mom was turning 60 a few weeks later, and I had already planned, like, I was taking a trip with her and my aunt. So I was leaving the country very shortly after getting engaged, and my father-in-law was like doing some work on, I was getting rid of carpets, and my father-in-law was like redoing that. So I was like, I know he's gonna be in there while I'm gone or whatever. And obviously I knew that my like we were gonna move together because he had his own home. So it
Mm-hmm.
made
Mm-hmm.
more financial sense to rent his home out, because at this point we're about to start paying for a wedding. So like, to get some of that back rather than we're both paying
Mortgage.
two
Yeah.
mortgages, it
Yeah.
just made more financial from that standpoint. It was like, why would we wait rather than
Mm-hmm.
possibly make a profit doing it this way? So I knew he was going to move in, but I really don't remember us talking about the timing of it. And so I came home from out of town, and there is stuff everywhere. And it's like, on top of, like, there's, dust and stuff from getting
From
rid of
the
carpet and this
construction.
vinyl. It's
Yeah.
just like, I'm in the kitchen, and there's just Tupperware, like, big old
That's a way to come
cases
off vacation.
of things. And I was overwhelmed, because I'm a person, like, I like neatness, especially in common areas. Like, he would probably say I'm a little OCD about it. Like, so just to see all the stuff, like, I made an appointment with the therapist, because I was like, it has to go. It has to go. I can't. No. So, and she talked about, like, she was like, okay, how long can we wait before we, because, it was also balancing in that thing, especially because some men, for whatever reason, would never move in to
The
the
woman.
woman's
Yeah.
home.
Yeah.
And it was like, of course you want to make sure that this now feels like our home. So it's like figuring that part out, but saying it in a way that doesn't make them feel like it's not their
Yeah.
space too.
Yeah.
So to your point, there was a lot of, because we had two homes, there was a lot of getting rid of things, several Goodwill runs. And I was like, okay, I could get this a week, but I can't, like, a week. You got to chip at this every day, because I can't. So, but that to me was the biggest adjustment of, like, figuring out whose stuff
Yeah.
to kind of keep, and then also making sure that he had a space that felt like his. So that room that was kind of like where I would watch TV, me and my dog, like, that became like the man cave, because it's away. But I think, yeah, for me that was the biggest adjustment. And then also the point we've spoken to is just like habits and quirks.
Yeah.
So I am the neater of us. I don't like dishes in the sink. I'm a certain way about laundry piling up. So, like, getting, and probably more of an adjustment for him than me, I suppose, because being the neater person, like, if something's there, he's like, I mean, I turn around, something was on the counter, now it's not. So I like, yeah, like, that's an ongoing adjustment.
Ooh.
That is, yeah. So,
And I think that's an adjustment on both parts. It's funny that you said, because I was like, let's quantify neater.
mm-hmm,
Because I think, like, you might be neat in certain spaces, and then
mm-hmm,
he'll be like, but look at this backyard, or something. It's something you're neat about. Like, I
yeah,
think for me, for us, it's very funny because I'm like, I do not like grease on the stove, right?
mm-hmm,
And he's okay, like, cooking and dishes be gone, but the stove is not gonna be clean. Like, I clean the stove.
mm-hmm,
Whereas, still in the same kitchen, he is like you with dishes. Like, he does
mm-hmm,
not like dishes in the sink. He's not
yeah,
gonna ever go to bed with dishes in the sink. And if he's away for a weekend, I can have a dish in the sink for 2 days. Like, but that
mm,
stove,
yeah,
so, like, I've, like, quantified neater. Do you have your
mm.
quirks about what you like, and then other things you're more relaxed on, or are you neat like that throughout the house, everywhere? Like, is your office immaculate at all times?
I think that I would say, like, overall I'm neater.
Okay. Okay.
But I do think there are certain spaces I care less about.
Yeah. Okay.
And I can't think of one that, like, there are certain things that he's just like cares about that I'm just like, it's not that deep. Not
Right.
from a neatness standpoint, but just like you said, to your point about a quirk.
Mm-hmm,
Um
mm-hmm.
and so like one thing he pointed out, and I was just like, well, then that's gonna be your thing because I don't even know how to get it off. He was talking about, I don't know if he saw it, whatever, but he was like, you have to make sure that you clean the filter in your, the water comes out of your refrigerator.
Okay,
He was like, you
okay,
have to make
okay.
sure like you really get in there because otherwise it can lead to mold or something. And I was like, okay, well then take that off and soak that and do, like, I'm not opposed to it, but I'm just like, do you know how to take this thing off
Right,
and do that?
right,
That's
right,
not a
right,
problem. But I kind of let him own
right.
certain
Mhm,
things
mhm,
because it's just
mhm.
like, well, don't make it another thing I gotta do. Like
Yeah,
then,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
so I would say stuff like that. I am going to, put it out there because he doesn't give credit anymore, but I, between my father and me, we have turned him into a yard person because my dad and I are very passionate about our fescue
Uh
and
huh. Uh
and
huh.
the cycle and whatever. And so, it's summer. I have accepted because it is the peak of summer. Like, the grass is going to be brown. Like, it's going
Yeah,
to be fried right
it
now.
is. Woof.
But it will be back in October, right on time for you to aerate, etc. He
Yeah.
is out there fighting the good fight with this sprinkler. He
I'm
runs that
trying. I was
sprinkler.
trying to, but I'm not winning the battle.
He runs that sprinkler every morning, and I'm just looking like, now look at you. When did you start caring? But like, that is because, and I just let him do the thing. But I'm just like, okay, he fighting a losing battle. Let you
Look, cause the
have it.
sun will soak it up in 30 minutes,
I
baby.
said, but let him. Okay, let him
Yeah.
have it. So yeah. To your point, there are things that you know that balance out in terms of who
Hmm.
cares about what. But yeah, for sure, an adjustment.
Yeah, it is an adjustment, and I think like learning to communicate has been like really big on that. Um, and just kind of realizing that you both probably at some point in time feel like, oh my God, do I have my space? Or
Mm-hmm.
um, because, for him, he doesn't necessarily have, I mean, he doesn't like necessarily believe in the whole man cave thing.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm sure if we could convert the garage into this space,
Yeah.
it would be lovely. We remodeled our backyard. I'm out there all the time. You know what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying? He's pretty much, got the office space, not necessarily the office, but next to it is like a living area where he can, watch TV. So we do, like you said, you make your spaces so it still feels like home
Yeah.
for both of you. For him, he moved out of an apartment.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and moved in with me, and that kind of made me think about you saying like a lot of guys don't want to move in with a woman.
Mm-hmm.
And that was, a conversation, speaking of comparison, and that in my last relationship, he was very adamant that he did not want to move in, with
Mm-hmm.
a woman. And of course it came up like after, this is why,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't think that's unique. I think that's anybody's fear, moving out of their space and into someone else's spaces, because if it doesn't work, somebody's got to move. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? So I think when you get comfortable and you start sharing spaces, man or woman, that's a scary thing to have to now restart your life
Mm-hmm.
and start over.
Yeah.
Um, so, just trying to make sure that that person does feel like home on both ends, because your
Mm-hmm.
home has suddenly changed
Mm-hmm.
when someone else is, moving to all the considerations
Yeah.
that you had, like the little things like having to call and check in with somebody,
Mm-hmm.
before you make a decision. Like that
Yeah.
is that's a lot
It's a habit.
on both
Yeah.
parties. Like when you're used to
Mm-hmm.
just moving on your own and not having to check in with somebody, like it can feel like control at first.
Yeah.
It can just feel very overwhelming at first, but then you just realize this is consideration. Like
Basically.
it's
And
just
just,
being
I mean, and
considerate.
just a safety thing, because I
Yeah.
just, I think I never really thought about it like that until, because I'm gonna be honest, I was a person who was worse at it. It was just like, I just went to such and such,
Right.
and so, whereas he was very early on pretty good at texting
Mm-hmm.
about the things, but I think to your point, it just has to become a habit.
Yeah.
And I think so. One of the things funny to me that in terms of the hour thing, so I think more so women, but there are some men who like are very into decorating their home. But I think we all have a certain style,
Mm.
and I think for me, like, travel is very important to me, and so like in the living room, I have black and whites because I find black and whites to be very like just classic, whatever. And so I had black and whites of like various places I had been, and he wanted to. Now I compromised. I just want to put that out there before I'm gonna say what I'm gonna say. But he wanted to take that lovely wall and put the United States like a geography map.
In black and white.
No, it was like literally it's a like a picture frame. It's a you can do United States
Uh-huh,
whatever,
uh-huh.
and you put pictures of yourself in each state like that
As you
you
okay,
as you
okay,
travel to them.
okay,
But it essentially looks like a map on there
okay.
instead, and I just was like. No, viscerally, my reaction was like, "Nah." Now we could change some of these pictures to places we've been,
Right, right.
but I was like, "I'm
Not
not
that.
coming off of that." And so now, what I did to compromise, there's another wall in the living room that I was like, okay, you if you want this map, you could put it over
Mhm,
there,
mhm.
and that and whatever. And so currently working through it because it uses the double-sided tape, and there's been some snafus, and I've just been trying to be patient to wait till my walls fixed. But
Oh my god.
but it's just an example of like trying to merge things and make sure like there's not this constant like no, because
Mhm,
like there
mhm.
is an attachment to what you're used to.
Yeah, to what you're used to, and that's it. Like I mean, it would be the same exact way if you had moved into his space. Like it's just
Mm-hmm.
making room, like
Mm-hmm.
sharing the closet. you know,
Yeah.
it's just yeah, it's those little things, but it's also when it's with the right one. Is I think it's more after you get past the discomfort. I don't even necessarily know that you ever get past the discomfort. Like we've been living together for almost 3 years at this point in time, and we still be like, so you going, we wash dishes different. He runs
Mm-hmm.
the water while he wash dishes. I'm gonna set the water in the bowl and wash dishes. Like we wash dishes differently, and there's still like little comments picking on each
Oh
other just
yeah.
about the different. So I don't know that you ever get used to it. They just stop becoming as annoying and as magnifying. But I
True.
think that's just the journey of, learning somebody and all the things. I do think for me, I didn't have the pressure that I thought I was going to have for shacking up from my mom. My dad's sick, so who knows what he would have thought about it. But from my mom, like it wasn't. I didn't get that from what I was expecting. So sometimes these fears that we have are like self-imposed,
Yeah.
because there wasn't any kind of conversation from her on either time. But for me, I would just say like it's really, really important to have the conversations because the second time that I shacked, we were not engaged.
Mm-hmm.
Or very early into our relationship. And there were conversations that like for me I still southern, like I'm not shacking up to be shacking up, like I don't need a roommate. Like
Mm-hmm.
so if you're moving in, like it's with the intent of marriage. That was very important for me, because at this point in time you still got your own place and you could be like, oh, that's not on my agenda,
Yeah.
and you could stay and we could stay and we could keep dating. Like there was no, but once you do,
Yeah.
you already know. So for me, there was no need to do this whole ultimatum thing and fighting thing and any of that because the conversation's already been laid out.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely was very big on like what bills do you want to handle, how do you want to do finances, how do you want to do bank accounts, like all those conversations happened before key was ever turned.
Mm.
So I think that moved a lot of the pressures out because we had already kind of had that
Yeah.
foundation on it. So that would be my recommendation if you're planning on doing it, making sure that you're having those tougher conversations
Mm-hmm.
so you're not guessing once you get in. And I mean, because there's always going to be surprises,
Yeah.
regardless. It's always going to be like, I didn't think it was going to be like this, or, this is great. This is better. I didn't think it was
Mm-hmm.
going to be like this. But some of those things you could alleviate by having those
Yeah.
conversations before a lease is signed, before a key is turned, if people are moving into other places and there's already mortgages, who's gonna handle the mortgages? Is somebody taking over the mortgage? Are we sharing things? So, yeah.
Yeah. I definitely second that. Definitely have conversations about who will handle what,
Mm-hmm.
maybe even especially if it's more serious debt. I will say this because of course you have your day rooms, you have all your things like people have debt, and
People have
that's not really
that.
the. I'm not saying it's not concerning. It does matter, what is more important is the mindset around it. So
Mm-hmm.
once you have a plan, understanding like, okay, what led to the debt, what are my, because it's a psychological things, and we could, again, another episode,
Mm-hmm.
but like, what are the things that I'm, just like you do work and therapy on other things, what work am I doing to make sure I don't repeat those habits? So that's the thing, just having a plan for that if there is debt, and working on the things to keep you from, once you get out of that debt, from basically adding it back on.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But definitely, like, have those talks beforehand. It'll save you a lot. And enjoy it too, because part
Yeah,
of it is, you are financially, to some extent, you're saving money
you
when
are.
two people
It
are
is a
taking care of
benefit
these
for sure.
things. So yeah, we hope this was helpful for you. And we are Divas and Ducats on all the things: Facebook, Instagram. Make sure you're following us. Also subscribe YouTube. Our email is divaadvice@gmail.com. That is divaadvice@gmail.com. All right. So in the meantime, in between time,
Have a great attitude.
all right.
Bye.